Round 1, fight! Hello, America, and welcome to this political Thunderdome where we're pitting two titans of American leadership against each other. Joe Scranton Strangler Biden versus Donald the Twitter Tornado Trump. Look, we all know these two aren't exactly the dream team of diplomacy, more like that couple arguing over the thermostat at 3 a.m. But love them or hate follow them on Twitter, their presidencies have impacted all of us. We'll be ruthlessly dissecting their performance on everything from jobs and that crumbling infrastructure we're constantly promised will be rebuilt to the stock market, which, let's be honest, most of us understand about as well as quantum physics. Food prices, manufacturing, society, yes, we're going there, foreign policy, inflation, and even housing policies. Buckle up because we're going deep. Think of this as a political autopsy, except both subjects are somehow, bafflingly, still alive and tweeting. Welcome to our in-depth comparison of President Biden and former President Trump on key issues affecting our nation. We'll be looking at their performance on jobs, infrastructure, the stock market, food prices, manufacturing, society, foreign policy, inflation, and housing policies. Alright, let's talk jobs, America. That thing your uncle claims to have stopped looking for because they're all going to robots anyway. Under Trump, we saw initially low unemployment rates dropping to 3.5% pre-pandemic. A roaring success? Well, depends on who you ask. Critics were quick to point out that this trend began under Obama. And, that whole pandemic thing kind of threw a wrench in the gears. Enter Biden, inheriting an economy on the ropes like a boxer in the 12th round. Unemployment spiked to 14.7% at the height of the pandemic, a figure not seen since the Great Depression, which, fun fact, also wasn't that fun. Since then, we've seen a steady decline, reaching 3.6% in March 2023. Biden loves to tout this as a historic recovery, and in fairness, it has been a pretty dramatic comeback. But hold your horses before you break out the Bidenomics banners. Critics argue this job growth was more about pent-up demand and a natural economic rebound than any specific Biden policy. They'll also point to the rising inflation eating away at those wage gains like a hungry caterpillar on a paycheck diet. Trump, of course, claims he would have done it better, which is a bold claim considering his preferred economic policy seems to involve tweeting angrily at the Federal Reserve. Look, it's complicated. Both administrations had their successes and failures, and frankly, attributing complex economic trends to a single president is like trying to blame a butterfly for a hurricane. So, who wins the job creation crown? Honestly, it's a split decision. Trump presided over a period of continued growth, but then again, so did the economy under Obama. Biden faced a tougher hand with the pandemic, but has overseen a remarkable recovery, even if inflation is raining on everyone's parade. It's enough to make you miss the good old days when the biggest economic threat was your roommate's avocado toast habit. Infrastructure Week. That magical time in Washington when politicians pretend to care about our crumbling roads and bridges. Trump promised us $1 trillion infrastructure plan. $1 trillion. You could practically taste the fresh asphalt and high-speed rail tickets. But, spoiler alert, it never really materialized. Turns out, Infrastructure Week is more like Infrastructure Week, a recurring segment of political theater where nothing gets done. Fast forward to Biden, who, after much debate and political wrangling, actually managed to pass a bipartisan infrastructure bill. I know, right? Shocking. While significantly smaller than Trump's empty promises, the bill still allocates a cool $1.2 trillion to fix roads, bridges, airports, and even expand broadband internet. Now, before we start celebrating with a conga line across a newly paved bridge, let's remember that passing a bill is like starting a marathon. The real work of actually seeing those improvements is still ahead, and we all know how America feels about long-term projects. See our attention spans. So, who wins the infrastructure showdown? Well, Biden actually managed to get something passed, which, in the current political climate, is like finding a unicorn riding a Segway through the halls of Congress, but it's still early days. Will those funds be used effectively? Will we finally get that high-speed rail to Disney World? Only time will tell. Buckle up, buttercups, because we're diving into the stock market. A magical land where money mysteriously appears and disappears with the push of a button, and the only constant is volatility. Under Trump, the market experienced a period of significant growth, fueled by tax cuts and deregulation. Of course, whether those gains actually trickled down to the average American is a debate for another time. Then came 2020, And, well, you know the rest. The pandemic hit, the market tanked faster than a poorly timed investment in hand sanitizer futures, and suddenly everyone became an expert on bear markets. Except for maybe that one uncle who's still convinced it's a good time to buy blockbuster stock. Enter Biden, inheriting a market still reeling from the pandemic punch. Despite a rocky start, the market has since rebounded, reaching record highs under his watch. Cue the Biden administration claiming victory, while conveniently forgetting to mention that stock market performance is influenced by a complex web of factors, many of which are beyond any president's control. So, who wins the stock market showdown? It depends on your investment strategy. If you're a short-term trader who thrives on volatility, Trump's presidency might have given you heart palpitations and a new yacht. If you're a long-term investor who prefers a steadier hand, Biden's presidency has, so far, provided a more stable ride. But let's be honest, trying to predict the stock market is like trying to predict the weather in a hurricane. You might get it right sometimes, but you're probably better off just battening down the hatches and hoping for the best. Chapter 4. Food prices, from farm to table. And through the roof? Let's talk food, folks. That thing you need to survive but can no longer afford thanks to inflation making a grocery run feel like a bank heist. Under Trump, food prices remained relatively stable, although his trade wars, particularly with China, did cause some price fluctuations. Remember when soybean prices became a national obsession? Those were weird times. Then came the pandemic, and suddenly, the global supply chain was about as reliable as a Wi-Fi connection on a transatlantic flight. Empty shelves became the new normal, and we all learned the true value of yeast. Under Biden, food prices have unfortunately continued to rise, fueled by a combination of factors, including supply chain disruptions, increased demand as the economy reopened, and yes, those pesky inflation woes. Remember that transitory inflation the Fed kept promising? Yeah, about that. So who wins the food price showdown? This one's a tough one. Trump's trade wars certainly didn't help matters. But Biden has faced the perfect storm of pandemic-related disruptions and inflation. Ultimately, the real winners here are the grocery store chains, who are laughing all the way to the bank, while we're stuck choosing between ramen noodles and generic brand cereal. Chapter 5. Manufacturing Making America What again? Remember when America used to make things? Like actual tangible objects, not just viral TikTok dances and questionable financial decisions? Trump certainly seemed to, making it a cornerstone of his campaign to make America great again. He slapped tariffs on Chinese imports, hoping to incentivize companies to bring manufacturing jobs back to the US. Did it work? Well, the results are about as clear as a muddy factory floor. While some companies did reshore manufacturing, others simply moved operations to other countries or passed the increased costs onto consumers. Biden, meanwhile, has continued to push for American manufacturing, albeit with a less, shall we say, combative approach. He's emphasized the need for investment in technology and worker training to make American manufacturing more competitive. So, who wins the manufacturing match? It's a close call. Trump talked a big game and threw some tariffs around like confetti at a ticker tape parade, but the long-term impact is debatable. Biden is taking a more measured approach, but it remains to be seen whether it will be enough to revitalize American manufacturing. One thing's for sure though, those Made in America labels just hit different now. Chapter 6. Society, did we even survive? Okay, deep breaths everyone, because we're about to wade into the minefield that is societal impact. Under Trump, America became, well, let's just say divided is putting it mildly. Political polarization reached new heights. Social media became a breeding ground for misinformation and outrage, and we all learned to fear the phrase "the president's tweets." Then came 2020, a year so tumultuous it made the previous 4 years look like a picnic in the park. The pandemic, the racial justice protests, the election, it was a collective national meltdown of epic proportions. Biden took office promising to heal the nation's wounds, a noble goal to be sure, but one that's proving about as easy as herding cats hopped up on energy drinks. The political divisions remain, misinformation continues to spread like wildfire in a dry climate, and let's not forget the ongoing pandemic fatigue that has everyone feeling like they're living the same day on repeat. So, who wins the societal impact showdown? Honestly, this one feels like a lose-lose situation. Trump's presidency exacerbated existing divisions, while Biden is struggling to bridge the chasm. maybe we should just all agree to disagree and go back to arguing about more important things, like whether pineapple belongs on pizza. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. Chapter 7. Foreign Policy, Making Friends and Enemies, the American Way. Alright, let's talk about America's favorite pastime, foreign policy. Specifically how Trump and Biden played on the global stage, and whether they left us standing on a world stage or hiding in the green room of international diplomacy. Trump, with his America First approach, certainly shook things up. He pulled out of international agreements like they were going out of style, slapped tariffs on allies and enemies alike, and generally treated diplomacy like a hostile takeover. Biden, on the other hand, campaigned on restoring America's global standing and repairing relationships with allies. He rejoined the Paris Climate Agreement, engaged in talks with Iran, and generally tried to project an image of stability and competence. So who wins the foreign policy face-off? It depends on what you're looking for. If you prefer a president who throws their weight around and isn't afraid to break a few diplomatic teacups, Trump was your guy. If you prefer a more traditional, multilateral approach, then Biden's your man. Either way, one thing's for sure. The world is a complicated place, and there are no easy answers in foreign policy. Chapter 8. Inflation, the silent thief stealing your joy and money. Remember when you could buy a gallon of gas and a gallon of milk without needing a small loan? Yeah, those were the days. But thanks to inflation, our wallets are feeling lighter and our dreams of early retirement are fading faster than a tan line in October. Under Trump, inflation remained relatively low, hovering around the Federal Reserve's target of 2%. Of course, critics argue that this was more due to factors like low oil prices and a strong dollar than any specific Trump policy. Then came the pandemic, and the global economy went about as haywire as a squirrel on a caffeine bender. Supply chain disruptions, increased demand, and massive government spending all contributed to inflation rates not seen since the days of shoulder pads and leg warmers. Biden, unfortunately, has borne the brunt of this inflationary storm. The Consumer Price Index, a key measure of inflation, has risen steadily under his watch, reaching a 40-year high in 2022. The Biden administration has blamed this on everything from Putin's invasion of Ukraine to greedy corporations, but the fact remains, inflation is a problem, and it's hitting Americans hard. So who wins the inflation interrogation? Honestly, this one feels like a no-win situation. Trump benefited from a relatively stable economic environment, while Biden has been dealt a tough hand with the pandemic and its aftermath. Either way, one thing's for sure, until inflation gets under control, we're all going to be feeling the pinch. Chapter 9. Housing Policies. The roof is on fire, and also unaffordable. Ah, housing. That basic human need that's somehow become about as attainable as winning the lottery while being struck by lightning twice. Under Trump, housing affordability continued to decline, particularly in urban areas. His administration's tax cuts largely benefited the wealthy, doing little to address the growing affordability crisis. Then came the pandemic, and the housing market went completely bonkers. Remote work led to increased demand in suburban and rural areas, driving up prices and leaving many first-time buyers out in the cold, literally. Biden came into office promising to address the housing crisis. He's proposed increasing the supply of affordable housing, providing rental assistance, and tackling discriminatory housing practices. So who wins the housing hustle? It's too early to say for sure. Trump's policies did little to address the growing affordability crisis, while Biden's proposals, while promising, have yet to be fully implemented. One thing's for certain, until we address the root causes of the housing crisis, like stagnant wages, income inequality, and a lack of affordable housing options, the American dream of homeownership will remain just that, a dream. Chapter 10. And the winner is. It's complicated. So there you have it, folks. A whirlwind tour of Biden and Trump's presidencies, from the economy to society and everything in between. We've crunched the numbers, analyzed the policies, and tried to make sense of it all, but ultimately, the question of who did a better job is a complex one with no easy answers. Both presidents had their successes and failures, and their legacies will be debated for years to come. What's clear is that the challenges facing America are significant, from economic inequality and climate change to political polarization and social unrest. It's up to us, the citizens, to hold our leaders accountable, demand better, and work towards creating a more just and equitable society for all. Thanks for watching our comparison of Biden and Trump on these critical issues. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more in-depth analyses. Let us know in the comments who you think did a better job and why.